Mr. Mayor, how are you? You want Mr. Kosher? Yeah, well.
Yes.
Oh, right.
You have another one? There's one extra.
Do I have another one?
No. Do you need another?
Hey, how are you? Maybe for about Mr. Harvey. Maybe give one to
Would you like this?
Why wouldn't I? I'm going to tell them.
Because Judge's Thomas from Johannesburg, South Africa. So one of those fish goes in the
Over there.
It was a beautiful town, our fall hotel. Overlooked the fall. Beautiful. 100%. That's why, because it's cold. Well, the bottom line is they had fun. Good. None of us still left. All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. We'll call to order the committee meeting for Monday, April 16th. And first on the agenda here, we have a presentation from the Woodlawn Preserve. And Ms. Janet Chen, please, can you see if this thing is on? It is on or is on? It is on. So I ask you to use our microphone here, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
So I'm here to bring you up to date on some recent events and developments within the Woodlawn Preserve. So I'll start just with a brief review of how we got started. So we began to meet around 2003 in response to the threat of imminent housing in the Woodlawn Preserve. By 2006, it was decided not to allow housing in that area, and a grant was secured to write a management plan focusing on restoring the area to what was once a pine barren community, much like the Albany Pine Bush. In 2012, the Friends of the Woodlawn Preserve were meeting regularly, and we became a 501c3 with our focus on protecting and promoting that area known as the Woodlawn Preserve. Sometime around 2014, Phil Steck came to one of our meetings and broached the idea of approaching the Albany Pine Bush Commission for assistance in restoring the area and arranged for the Albany Pine Bush Preserve to receive an additional $100,000 a year to help us toward that goal. In 2015, we signed a cooperative agreement between the Albany Pine Bush Commission, the City of Schenectady, and the Friends of the Woodlawn Preserve to come in. The Pine Bush would come in, evaluate our needs, and we would receive $50,000 from that $100,000. It's a carve-out, more or less, for the city to use towards restoring the area. So in 2015 to 2016, carve-out of $50,000 was used to do a survey of the entire Pine Barren area within Schenectady County, including lands in Rotterdam and Niskayuna. So the entire area is now being posted as the Schenectady Pine Barrens Preserve. We're still the Woodlawn Preserve. Just this past Monday, April 2nd, members of the Friends of the Woodlawn Preserve met with members of the Albany Pine Bush Commission, Mayor Gary McCarthy, City Engineer Chris Wallen, James Hart, who's a junior civil engineer, and Alex Sutherland, the Director of Operations, to discuss the draft habitat restoration plan that was developed by Neil Gifford, who was the Conservation Director for the Albany Pine Bush Commission. So within the Woodlawn Preserve, there's approximately 35 acres of potentially restorable pitch pine scrub oak communities and potential conifer habitat. 5 to 6 year timeline was outlined, including removal of invasive species and planting native grasses and lupin in the targeted area, and culminating in the introduction of Carner blue and frosted elfin butterflies. So this initial work will be funded by the 2016 to 2017 carve-out. We'll skip the 2017-18 allotment to allow us time to get the initial work started, and then perhaps reapply for the 2018-2019 grant. And we've agreed to at least meet twice a year, spring and fall, to discuss progress and develop plans for future restoration. This is a really exciting opportunity for us. It's a development that we've been envisioning ever since 2002, 2003, when we first started to. Our goal then was just to simply preserve and prevent development and promote. And, we had pipe dreams of having Carner blues back in the area and having it restored, but now it's really coming into fruition. We've achieved our goal, so we're really happy, and we're moving on now with new goals. So our newer goals now is to rid the area of the Pine Barren Preserve of invasive plants, restore a more balanced wildlife community, develop and maintain trails. We'd like to focus more on events and education. We would also like to assist the Schenectady schools in visiting the preserve. Perhaps as an inspiration, the Albany Pine Bush has a program called Ticket to Ride, in which schools apply and get financial grants for transportation to the Pine Bush. And we can do something similar with that as we beef up our fundraising. So the Woodlawn School is really lucky. The preserve is right in their backyard. And the Pine Bush has actually been assisting the teachers there, leading hikes and providing equipment for the students to use. You've heard us speak of the mitigation project, and that's something else I wanted to address, because Leah Toyota in Latham had a wetland that they needed to fill in. So in order to mitigate that wetland being filled in, they would create a small wetland for us in the preserve, but also they were going to get rid of all of that invasive Phragmites. So last year was the target year. The work was going to start, but the beavers had their own plans. They managed to effectively dam up the culvert so well that it created wetland in the area where the wetland was created. So as a result, Northway Toyota decided it can't put off its need to satisfy the mitigation requirements for their project, and they purchased in-lieu fee credits instead of completing our wetland creation. So for now, we're stuck with the Phragmites, and we'll have to develop our own plan for control. But we're looking into more grants. We just applied for a grant through PRISM, which is the Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Monitoring. We didn't get it because we were 15 minutes late actually getting the grants in. This is kind of a last minute thing. But it's all written up and it's ready to go for next year or for whatever grant comes up next. And that's what our focus is on. Does anybody have any questions? This is, we're really happy with this latest development, especially with meeting more regularly and having this work start. It's really a dream come true for us.
You have your fishing derby planned again in
June 23rd is our 4th annual fishing day. Free barbecue, free fishing equipment, prizes awarded for the biggest fish and whatever else categories we come up with. As the chief cook here.
and bottle wash.
Barbecue. Yeah.
But please, you have to stop down and go visit. I can't, you really just touched on a little bit of what they've really done. And they meet every 4th Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
At the
at the
ancient
Hibernian Hall.
Right, the Hibernian Hall, where everything takes place in the city. So please stop down over there the 4th Wednesday, and again, any way to support the preserve. No other questions? Nothing, John? Jen, thank you very much for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Where did Andrew? My copy, he has my copy. All right, so we'll move on to the next portion here. It's our Committee on Administrative Efficiency, and this is a committee that has been in existence since 2010. It was brought back to light back then. Fellow council member at that time, Tom Del Silva, was the first chair of that committee. And its purpose was to bring department heads in to the city council meetings on a monthly basis to discuss topics and concerns from each department. And of course, in light of what has been happening with code enforcement and wonderful improvements that the mayor and everybody have been working on, I just thought it would be very proper to bring code enforcement to light this evening. And then for discussion later on, we'll find out, so we'll talk about what department head we want for future dates. And we'll always have it on the second Monday of every month, similar to our coffee with the council, where we meet with our public constituents, with the green market. So again, this is just a way to really get some good updates and really what's happening here in the city of Schenectady. So I'll turn it over to the mayor, and if you want to introduce from there, if you don't mind.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity to do the presentation. You have tonight Commissioner Michael Ivins, Assistant Police Chief Jack Falvo, and Chief Building Inspector Chris Lund are available. And Commissioner, you want to lead off?
Have you up here, if you don't mind, sir? Everybody has a copy of, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to allow us to explain to you where we are, what we've accomplished, and where we're headed. Make it as informative as possible. Earlier today, I had worked on a kind of a bullet list of things that we have completed to date, things that are underway, and the concepts and thoughts we have in the planning stages. We tried to get it sent to you earlier today so that you have a chance up to speed on all of it, rather than me having to recount it to you orally. I think that the documentation also speaks for itself by way of the things that we've been focusing on. Also, I included the 8 recommendations made by the grand jury report, along with a very short statement of what we've done and what our reactions to each recommended positions. I can summarize the fact that we recognized that we needed work to do many months ago, and we have begun working on these important tasks beginning in January of this year. And Chief Falvo was a great addition as chief coming over, helping from the police department, because we recognized that coordination between police, fire, and the building department was key to making this work correct. And he's done a great job. We have a lot of work to do, but we've made also, as you can see, a lot of progress today. And Chris Lund has been excellent as our building inspector. He's motivated, he's hardworking, he's got great ideas. All of us are committed to making the buildings department as effective as we can, and it's something we ought to be proud of. I don't want to steal Chris's thunder. I wanted to make sure he said this, but so that all of you are aware, at this moment, we have no outstanding CPRs in the city. Zero.
What's the CPR's on the side?
Code violation report.
There, thank you.
The main reason we have that is we don't have any, is Chris Lund. Once we get a CPR report from the fire department, Chris immediately responds. In fact, here about 20 minutes ago, we were talking about who might say what, and Chris had to go to the fire at the Mexican radio. So Chris interrupted the meeting and went there directly, right now. I mean, that's real time. So we aren't going to wait and file a report and then get to it at some point later. We're going to take care of it. I know that Chief Falvo has some things to say, and also Chris Lund. If you have any questions, maybe when we're finished, we'll be happy to answer the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk a little bit about some of the progress that we've made. But first I want to say that we have an excellent team assembled here between the Commissioner, Chris, Ron, and myself. And I've been saying it since I started in this position back in January that there's definitely a nexus between police, fire, and the buildings department. And they all go hand in hand, I believe. And that's for the betterment of the city and accomplishing our goals. I'd like to also say that prior to the grand jury report, it was very obvious to all three of us that we had not communicated prior to this about the pitfalls we recognized. And as you see in the grand jury report, we recognized the pitfalls and started immediately on rectifying these issues and problems. So we did get a nice jump start on it, and the supervision needed some tweaking and it's still in progress, as well as training. And they go hand in hand. In addition, we did some reworking, and again, and I know Chris is going to talk about this, but we reworked the job description a little bit, and that's still in progress. So we can have everybody operating the same exact way, and that's important. So when you see an inspection or an inspection is complete, everybody's doing the same exact way. And that's important. We do have weekly meetings. A lot of times, more often, as far as with the fire staff, we do weekly training with the fire staff. I have some police officers doing some training with the code officers. And eventually, our goal is to reverse that. Because as I said, there's a connection here between police and code. Police are notifying the buildings department when they do recognize a problem, when they're on call for service. Well, we also want to adjust that and massage that a little bit. So again, we can become more proficient and take care of the problems out there in the community.
I'm not the best speaker, but I'm really glad to have the commissioner and Chief Pavo. They're a great addition to our building department. One thing I want to say is I'm committed to the community here. That was one of my first things, was to reach out to the community. The community was reaching out and saying, hey, we need to be tight. I realized early on how important the building department is to the city. It's the hub of the city. The fire department, the police department, but also all the other departments and people that are in need come to the building department. If there's something wrong, or if they're just trying to build something in the future. So it's a very diverse department, and what we want to do in the future is sort of eliminate our housing inspectors and create a one code officer that can do it all. And this way we have less deficiencies. We don't have as many people going to court in certain cases. And we want them all cross-trained and just to have a unified department that can do it all any day of the week and cover for somebody who's out. They said, I looked at the code CVRs, or the code violation reports. That was one of the first things. I noticed there was a little problem we had here, the way the building department was handling them. And we worked closely with the fire department and the law department, and we got this correct. And what the correction is it's an emergency response. This has put a lot on my plate. I go out a lot, maybe 1 to 4 times, a night sometimes. This wasn't budgeted, but this is something I'm committed to and I believe in. I really believe that we have to work hand in hand with our fire department, and emergency response is what code officers should be doing. This is the best service I can provide to the community, and that's what I'm committed to, is community service and, a department that is very productive. So I really want to thank everybody for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Chief Senecal, do you have anything to add? I know you're here. I don't want to catch you off guard. Is there anything you want to comment on by chance?
It's pretty much covered. I would like to say that, echoing Commissioner Chris said, it's really a 24-hour operation. Chief building inspector, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, Sunday, welcome there. The commissioner, whether it's up the river, the mudslide, the fire, no matter what it is, we're on top of it immediately. There's been a lot of progress. Worked very closely, so I'm very pleased with that direction.
Very good. And again, thank you for the very detailed report here that you sent out. I hope everybody got a chance to preview it. prior to coming this evening. And I'll be very honest with you, probably more than half of this stuff, I didn't realize that we already had in their enforcement department already. So again, hats off, and again, thank you for your dedication, your hard work, and of course, the mayor as well, moving forward on this. So, we'll open up to questions of the council as well, and, Ms. Peraza, we'll let you go. Go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, certainly, the efforts are commendable. I give kudos to all involved under the mayor's leadership in moving this forward in a positive direction. I was very happy to see that underway. There's 2 suggestions for city ordinances. This is why I wanted to have this discussion, and why I had asked to have it on the agenda. So I'm very happy to see those as recommendations. They're in keeping with other recommendations that have been put forward, and I do hope that the council will discuss those and move forward with those sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Ms. Porterfield.
Yes, I did a quick question. It refers to the document. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation and for all the information. The document refers to multiple dwellings. So what is that defined as?
You mean 3 unit and above?
3 and above. Oh, all right, thank you. And where it's underway, it says that currently that you're suggesting enacting the ordinance to conform with New York state law, which requires inspection for at least 3 years. How often are we currently inspecting those multiple dwellings?
The city ordinance says that we're supposed to inspect for change of tenancy.
Okay.
And this is where it's a little bit of a breakdown, and we need a change in ordinance. We've been actively working on coming up with a system that works and is in a time-based system. Without giving away too much, the commissioner's been deep in detail with this.
And I do have one final question. So in terms of landlord and building owners, how do they know what's expected when someone comes for an inspection, like what you're looking for?
Sure, that's one thing I changed in my department is, so I looked through all our documents and there was a rental checklist, but if you come down to my department, I've detailed this list and made it very user-friendly, and so you know exactly what is entailed into an inspection, what we expect, and what's going to happen when the code officer arrives at your residence.
Thank you.
And I think in Ms. Porterfield's comment, last year or the year before, we were receiving several complaints from some of our landlords that upon inspection, they weren't sure what inspectors were looking for. They thought they were being singled out for individual reasons or such not. But again, if you've already got that in place, I really appreciate that. And again, back to Ms. Porterfield, where if we can get this online by any chance too, I really would appreciate that, because there's so much in here. Regarding the multiple dwelling, one of the comments that was made in the findings of the grand jury was that I believe it was almost 2/3 of our multiple dwellings were not inspected or re-inspected. And again, in this short period of time, as the notice here, each multiple dwelling has been inspected, and we are in compliance with New York State requirement. Again, goes to show that just how hardworking this department has really done in the last few months. And I think this is something that we really have to make sure our residents, community, know that we are doing this. Any other questions, Mr. Vicky?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation, for your hard work. How are citizen complaints going to be handled? Is there going to be any changes in there?
Such as,
When someone calls in,
code
or someone
violations?
calls, yeah, for code violations. Is there going to be any improvement in that? Because I get complaints that they don't get answered, I've been getting.
yeah, keep coming.
We have the citizen tracker. We have the citizen tracker. We close out the complaints as they come on the citizen tracker, and we're having a very good time logging them in. The other way, we take them in our office. You can come in for written place.
So that's going to be streamlined and make it a little more user-friendly.
I would like to. I really would. Yeah, I would like to. I've heard the same complaints.
Yeah.
I go to a lot of neighborhood association meetings, and I like to get the feedback. What people are saying.
Because I think that's important. That's what the residents, when they feel they see something wrong, they want to report it and see that there's, action or response to that.
Right.
And if they can be notified if there is, it'd be a good thing also.
The other thing is, we're looking at, we're currently at 5 zones we have, and breaking that up into smaller zones. That way it's more manageable, and that way we can get to it a little
You're
quicker.
looking to hire 2 more?
There we go. It will help. I believe that we need more, but I think that's a good.
And I think training is a big component as well. I think Commissioner Ida had that. Again, this report is very detailed, very in-depth. They've covered a lot of that training. Go ahead, I touched on a lot of stuff, but this is all excellent.
Attached to the memorandum that I prepared, that wasn't in the email, is a photocopy of an internal memorandum that we have that memorialized the meeting that Chief Allo had with the staff a week and a half ago or so. If you take a look at that, you'll see the kind of approach that we're taking with the rest of the staff. And we've identified the topics one by one that he spends time with them talking about, and it's consistency of training and professionalism are the themes. And so far, everybody's on board.
I have 2 more questions.
Go ahead, follow.
Interesting on the grand jury report, one thing that I have a question on is, in addition, no employee will be permitted to accept any gifts. I think that goes without saying. No employee will be permitted to issue permits or perform inspections to close friends or relatives. How are we gonna delineate who's a close friend? I mean, Schenectady, a lot of people know a lot of people, so if I know someone, if I'm an inspector, is he gonna be able to issue a permit or write a violation?
No,
No. So just knowing someone,
yes, just knowing them, family members,
I
friends.
understand the family
They-
members, but,
They'll be taken out of that equation and it'll be reassigned.
so you're gonna, how are you gonna do this? Is the person gonna have to sign off that I don't know this person? Is the inspector gonna have to sign off, I don't know Vince Riggy?
No, the responsibility possibly will rest with, not entirely the code enforcement officer, but, also, I don't know if we get much cooperation from the public, but primarily the code officer, they're the ones that have to recognize that there's a possible conflict.
If they know
of interest.
there's a conflict. So they're gonna be on their honor then to do this? I mean, if they're if they're issuing a permit, I mean, they're gonna know a lot of the contractors, aren't they?
It's not so much issuing the permit as it is doing an inspection.
Because
Because anybody can come down and issue, an issue permit. They're coming in and saying, I need to demo, I need construction.
Yeah.
If that doesn't, that's not, we see that as an issue.
Okay.
The issue is.
So that part's a little misleading then, because no employee will be permitted to issue permits or perform inspections for close friends or relatives. That's the answer to the grand jury for number 1.
I think also the word there is close friends, Mr. Riggi. I mean, right? I mean,
That's
close
what
friends.
that's why I asked
As
the
opposed to
question.
just knowing us, I mean, everybody's gonna know.
And that's what I said, but did you hear the answer?
Yeah.
If you just know someone, we
Yeah.
all know someone. The city's a
I think
small
that's
town.
the key there.
So that may be a tough one to afford. What I'm saying is that's gonna be tough.
That's why I emphasized it in the meeting with the staff. So I dealt with it there, and they have to really come to the supervisor and say, look, I think this is a problem. And so, but, if someone makes a complaint, which could happen,
Yeah.
then we'll investigate it. And that's the other thing, all complaints are going to be investigated.
We want to make sure that we avoid that situation where we have a landlord or homeowner calling the building department requesting that a particular code enforcement officer perform an inspection. We want to eliminate that with a clear policy. That's the intent.
My last question, how much time are you spending, Chief?
Well, about 50-50.
About 50/50. Police and fire. I mean, police
Police
department.
department is both.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else? So I've got another question, regarding the violations, I guess, Chris, you brought, in past, if we called in a code violation, and then they came there and they found there was more trash on the ground rather than a code violation itself, we would have to call another department to come in to issue the summons or the ticket, and it would be out of your hands? Are we talking now there's gonna finally be one department that's gonna be able to issue the ticket or the violation?
Sure, this is the final hope, is to
Right.
unify what we see as three departments in the future maybe, but as of now, I wanted to internally housing and code officers. And we have looked at the taking nuisance and combining that also. I don't think we're prepared for that yet, but I believe that's the way of the future.
I really think we have to, yeah, because that's just such a big common complaint in the city. And I know we get it all the time as council members, and then they show up and it's all trash, and then it gets kicked back and we start all over again with this cycle. But again, yeah, the request tracker, the citizens request tracker thing has been very, very successful. I know Helen McDonald, Colorado native, she did it a couple times, and Linda Wolf and some folks, they've been getting excellent results, almost next day, people coming out there. So I encourage everybody to go to the website. That's what it's there for, to log into. You just need a simple email and create your own password, and you can register your complaint online, and it is all anonymous as well, so which is good, and I appreciate that.
Just on
Yeah.
that question. Just, again, to streamline that, which is a good idea, instead of having a nuisance officer, but one of the big problems we get is, especially in the summertime, in the wintertime with snow, unplowed sidewalks, but high grass. So if there's multiple problems in this house, but the main thing that people see and the neighbors complain about, the grass hasn't been cut, or there's trash out, will that be addressed first before the other issues? Because we send a snack food sometimes, if it's either an absentee landlord or something. So I hope that we're gonna be able to still continue and get that done in an orderly.
Well, the great, yeah, well, I think that is a concern. The great thing that we have coming is, before we all started, Municity, a new, software system, that really defines what code enforcement is, and, this is in field. We can do a lot of the stuff in field, in the cars, printers, and we're just gonna streamline efficiency, less time in the office and more time out in the city doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Excellent, excellent.
You have to remember that the systems were entirely manual, so everything was in a paper file. You had nuisance officers doing something, code officers doing something, and you have police department, fire department, other agencies, a lot of times interacting with these same properties, and there's not a mechanism to exchange the information. And so that's what we're doing with the Attorney General's office, with building blocks, with the Center for Technology and Government, which is evolved to Municity, and working with the CAPSNet system, looking to move that over to another database so that we can work in a coordinated manner. When you're getting called to a property, the problems get solved the first time. Whether the first agency there happens to be the police department, a code officer, any engagement with public official.
Right. Is it fair to say that we have not heard from the Attorney General's office yet, Rick, from their reports, and should we be waiting on all that, or the Controller's report, I'm sorry. Controller's report, and should that something we should be waiting for, so we get their recommendations before we move forward with any of this grand jury stuff?
Well,
or mayor?
we were randomly picked for that.
Right, one of 6 cities.
Cooperated fully with it.
Right.
They have requested that, again, everything that we have done is in draft form. They're still reviewing that. They look at Schenectady somewhat as maybe a black eye in the whole process because of our inability to coordinate in a manner that's keeping with their level of confidentiality, moving forward to that final report. Again, whatever that final report may indicate, we're going to work with them to continue to build on the remedial platforms that we have in place.
So Commissioner and Mayor, it would make more sense to wait until that report comes from that office in order to bring everything together?
Staff's not going to comment on the controller's audit. We've been asked to do that. Whatever the council does is your
prerogative.
I don't know if it's your prerogative, it may be your action.
Okay.
But no staff, no way it works for me, is going to publicly or make any comment on it.
All right, okay, so that kind of, what's the feeling of the council? Just a little feedback on that. Is this feeling that we should kind of wait until we get that
But I
report
think-
back from the
Don't
state,
you think
or?
we should pass the ordinance to have buildings inspected every 3 years? That's uniform state code, isn't it? I believe.
Yes.
Should that be something we should do fairly quickly? Because what's the wait with that?
Yep, some of the stuff that was suggested here, Ms. Brazo?
Right, I'm talking about the recommendations within this document that was just provided to us, two
So
of which
Which ones are we talking
suggest
about?
a city ordinance. One, to conform to New York state law, to require that multiple dwellings be inspected every 3 years, and the other is enacting a city ordinance that requires annual inspection of every unit with an alarm system. I mean, that's coming straight from the staff, and I really highly regard what actions have been taken, and I think from the council's part of it, because we do have the checks and balance part of this system, that I would like to discuss their suggestions sooner rather than later.
Everybody else in agreement with that? Any other concerns? We're okay with all that? All right, so we'll put that in a couple of weeks and we'll work with,
We'll try and have draft legislation prepared for a committee meeting in 2 weeks.
actually it'll be longer than that because we're off there's 5 Mondays, so that's a good thing.
The next
3
committee
weeks.
meeting.
See you in May. All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, again, thank you very, very much. Appreciate your time this evening, and Chief Seneca as well. Thank you much. Appreciate it. All right, so I will make a motion to adjourn this committee.
So moved. Second.
Second, Mr. Rometti, all in favor, say aye. All right, thank you.
So, I think open city development and planning, and the first item on the agenda is accept the DPC, climate smart community grant. Come on up.
Who's got this? Oh, the whole trio. That's right.
Gang's all here.
Thought everyone was here for this.
No.
I don't think so.
Riveting. Do you wanna-
Ta-da. Main
All
speaker.
right, thank you for having us. I'm Eric Shannon.
Carrie O'Connor?
And we are the.
The Climate Smart Community, so we're here to address any questions or comments, go over a couple points of the legislative request form. This grant was to help us form the Climate Smart Communities Long-Term Sustainability and Planning Committee that will be made up of at least 6 city employees. That committee will work to put together a vulnerability assessment and greenhouse gas report. We will be reviewing current city plans throughout multiple departments in terms of sustainability and planning efforts that we have going on right now. We will be looking to get Climate Smart Community certified by completing multiple action items within the Climate Smart Community structure that they have set up. And then we will also be looking to identify future grant opportunities that the city will be able to obtain in regards to sustainability and planning. The $28,000 will be matched by the time of the committee, and that will be going towards a consultant to help us implement the different actions that are.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'm just gonna take questions. Anybody? Ms. Porterfield?
Thank you. The entire 28,000 is to hire a consultant,
Correct.
and then an employee, our match is the in-kind employee time.
Correct. It's a 24-month period,
Okay,
so.
all right, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
I believe everything else on this has been,
Right.
oh, all right,
And paving.
paving in the yards, okay. So purchase option on Miracle on Craig Street. So that is Rachel?
Me, yes. Miracle on Craig Street, it has been, working together to try and build, coalition, kind of get the fundraising up in order to get some investors and prospective financials in place. They're looking for a letter of intent from the city that we would be willing to transfer these properties to them. And I wrote all the properties out. There is 6 total. This isn't a purchase and sale. This is just a letter of intent basically giving them a 6-month option that we would look into selling the properties to them, should they be able to come forward with the proper financing in place. So the holdup has been just trying to making sure we can secure the funds. This is going to be a massive undertaking. Just want to make sure that they can get the grants in place to secure the funding should the property be transferred. This letter of intent would allow them to show it to potential investors as part of their grant funding packages to say that the city is on board, so long as we can get the grants necessary.
Ms. Cross?
And I assume any details of the sale, like if they weren't able to get the funding to complete the project, that it would revert to the city, or if they were
Correct.
unable to remove the or whatever the case may be, those details would come later.
That's right, and there'd be no transfer at this point. This is just preliminarily, just so that they can try and get fundraising and get the grant funding in place for the project down the road. We can't, we don't want to transfer the property to them at this point because, like I said, it's going to be a massive undertaking. At this point, we'd rather retain site control of it. If they can prove with this, assistance that they can get the financials to move the property along, the project along, we'll bring it back to council and give you that information at that point.
Well, with the letter of intent, are they then able to move forward with the historic designation of the building, or was that something that they could only move forward with after the sale?
I believe the historic designation could only move forward after the sale of the building, but this would allow them to at least fundamentally get out there to, get some other things in place first. I know the mayor and I have discussed this a little bit, but the concern is just that the project may be much more massive than originally anticipated. They have done some of the feasibility studies and things like that, so they're getting somewhere. We kind of have an idea of ballpark what we need, but now the next step is just really to get the financing in place. So I think this would help them a great deal to be able to show it to investors or potential community development resources, the city's committed to working with us instead of just telling people that,
Any questions? You said it's 6 months. It's a 6 month from when we signed the letter, correct?
Correct.
And they have to have the financing in place within that 6 month time frame, or at least committed to?
At least show us how they're gonna be financing it, not necessarily, at least have applied and just kind of give us a better direction of where that money is gonna come from within 6 months. Then I can bring it back and at least see where we're at or what's happened in that time. I don't know with the grant funding, if that's something that normally happens that quickly, but I would think that we could at least get the ball rolling, be able to have some evidence, some change in the right direction.
Any other questions?
I'll move it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Boys and Girls Club zoning, and you're still on?
Yes. We're looking for, and I don't know, Avi, you wanted to speak to this at all, but I don't want to step. Okay, all right, that's fine. We're looking to, last year, City Council passed a resolution to alienate the parkland to transfer to the Boys and Girls Club construction for their facility. We further found out that it would, basically the zoning of that parcel would not allow for this, so we're asking that the zoning be changed to institutional district, and that was provided, that language, what that would allow for. So right now, the Development Department and Planning Commission is asking that the City Council pass a resolution referring the zoning amendment proposal to the Planning Commission to change this to an institutional district and to act as a lead agency for seeker.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Excellent. Paving in the yards. Mr. Wallen?
Wallen. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. So this is something that we've been discussing with Mr. Wall and myself. Mr. Riggy had a few calls of concern. So we decided to bring it to the agenda and have Mr. Wall kind of walk us through where we are and what steps can we put in place to address these concerns with people paving the entire yard.
Sure, kind of a follow-up to the discussion that was had earlier about codes departments. This position of enforcement was actually moved to codes. Reason being is that paving of the yards is a private property issue. We've struggled for years. We're having our senior streets inspector going onto the property as he does not. Engineering is the right of way, public domain.
expanded from the roads, from street cuts to the yards when the paving program was instituted, because it was thought asphalt is asphalt. However, the asphalt placed in a roadway is different than the asphalt placed on a private property. So what we ran into for a very long time was a issue of enforcement in regards to a inspector that is for the roads going on properties. So what we've done is, I heard Chris Lawn and Valvo and Commissioner Iden speaking in my office. And, it's kind of what we're talking about, trying to get the efficiencies, trying to get permitting, trying to get everything level so it's a little bit more easily to understand, is we moved our street facility inspector down to the codes department, turned him into a CEO, and he is working now at that level. It's going to give him a little bit more power as a CEO to actually write violations, work with the law department. One of the things that we talked about after we had talked about this at the last session that I was here talking about paving roads is, are there holes in the code? Right now, we don't feel that there's holes necessarily in the code. It's just that what we need to do is just put the teeth into the code, and that's one of the things that we're going to be going out with is a little bit more of an aggressive campaign. Now that we know that this is such an issue for the council, our corporate council is aware of it, the mayor is aware of it, we've talked about this internally, and, we're trying to tighten up the applications. I'm talking to Avi about how we can tighten up applications, because I know one of the concerns in Mr. Harvey's letter was paving of front yards, which is also already in the code. It can't happen in front of the homes. So what we want to do is try to get them. The problem is that once they do it, that's where we're wondering is how we remove it. That's still one of the spots that we get into the mediation of it, but what we want to do is really push for more accurate, more detailed applications, the maps. A lot of people just do a quick sketch, and the sketch can be interpreted sometimes a little bit. We really want to get into dimensioning things a little bit better. We don't want to go to a survey level, as that will be a really large burden on the resident to say, we want a survey and a layout. However, we want, just south of that, because the issue keeps growing.
Isn't there a percentage how much of data?
Correct. Yes. You have to have 20%, 20% is pervious. It can't be paved. Green area, planting area. And we check that on our calculations. We do check it against our tax maps when we do the application. However, what we're getting is, I'm going to leave a 10-foot strip here, 10 foot, 10 foot, and I just want this parking area. And then when we go to do our post-inspection, it's gone. It's all gone. And then what's the next step? That's what we're really working on, is that next step. Because they get it to get people do it, to get the permit. And then when they have the permit, they kind of take for granted what it is.
So in the code, does it say in the code what, like, can we force them to take out, reduce it back?
I haven't dived into it yet, but that's, like, with the sidewalks we have, if someone does, we are allowed to take out the area, put it back to our code, such as an asphalt sidewalk, we put it back to concrete. We could put it against the property owner, but really haven't gotten to that level. Never enforce that. Right, we've never taken it to that step.
The problem comes with the runoff. That's
100%.
That's the complaints I got. Somebody paved their yard on Cherry Street, a rear yard, and the guy next door, he has all kinds of water problems now. That the water's coming into his house, into his foundation. Right. And he didn't have that before it was paved. So I think it's something, we're gonna have to at some point force them to remove it if it's not within code of the city. If it isn't, we're gonna have to force them to remove it, because you can't. I don't know what else you can do if property owners are having, adjoining property owners are having problems because somebody's doing this.
And as I spoke of last time I was up there, when we were talking about kind of the issues in the city, even if water did run down the driveway perfectly without going in the street, if everyone were to do that, the streets would flood.
Yeah.
Our systems aren't built to handle neighborhoods. They're built to handle roads. They're built to handle some of the right of way. So it is an issue. Like I say, that we're going to be really trying to crack down, looking at the application. The step was trying to bring it into the code enforcement where they have a little bit more authority legally in the city. Fred is aware of it. I mean, he is chomping at the bit to really get into this. He's relishing his new position where he's going to have a little bit more authority, because very strongly worded letter. And we did follow up, it was just, it was a lengthier process due to his position. We were working a lot with the law department, with Dean Smith, we were going through, we just started getting to the point of actually giving depositions, but it was a long time coming to get to that level because of kind of his role on it. And, the city's role, my role, Chris Lund and I have the agreement, I don't go on the private property, he goes, we kind of have that barrier.
Madam Chairperson. I know this is getting in the weeds, but I'll just throw it out there. Would there be possibly a way that where we would have people have to stake out where they're going to pour the asphalt and then inspect before it's poured instead of after it's poured, right?
Yes.
So that they would have to physically show where the asphalt was going down, and then at some point there would have to be a follow-up, and I know we have a crushing load as it is.
We always do the follow-up.
Right, I get the
because of
follow-up.
issue.
But maybe before it got poured would help us.
Yeah, the issue could be, we always have this with regards to manpower. Is with regards to the inspections during, or to actually have someone there during the whole time.
Not the whole time.
Yeah, it gets tough.
They staked it out.
We're looking internally, currently under the code, we're not ready to make a recommendation yet. The code has that it's the property owner's responsibility. So the case, it's not only for paving, but pulling building permits, electrical permits. You have a problem with your furnace, you call a repair person, you think maybe it's just going to be repaired. Ends up you've got to have the furnace replaced. That requires a permit to be pulled. It's the one time in your life you're probably going to have a furnace replaced, but you don't know if it needs a permit or not. The code responsibility goes solely to the property owner. We're looking to make both the contractor and the property owner liable for it. So you have contractors who really have a greater technical knowledge. That's their business. They're out there, they know what they can do and can't do. But today, the only recourse is to go through a slow and laborious process with the homeowner who may not have acted in bad faith, but relying on the advice of a contractor and assuming they're going to take care of the paperwork and the permits. So we're looking to bring that back not only for the sidewalks, driveways, but for building permits, electric permits, plumbing permits also.
Yeah, that's a great point. We do have a lot of contractors, several contractors that would encourage the property owners to take out the permit. And the issue with that is they'll take out the permit, the property owner take out the permit, go into an agreement with them. And inevitably the biggest problem we'll have is that the sidewalk, they'll pave the driveway, pull the asphalt right over the sidewalk, right down the road. To the property owner, it looks like $1 million until we go and do the close inspection and you paved over your sidewalk, that's not against its code. And the property owner gets something, and then they inevitably come back and say, well, the paver told me this was fine, and we don't have the paver on any record, we have the property owner. So we go with the property owner. So the paver is really not there, and the one that's affected is the property owner. We have other instances of pavers coming in and doing things, kind of gypsy, using materials that we may not use, using things, kind of taking advantage of people. And, that's where we could always get the contractor and always tie it back to them. That would be a start, but.
Yes.
This is a big issue because it isn't like somebody that pours concrete. You can see the forms are in, they're 4 inches deep. But like you say, use the word gypsy because that's what it is. There's a lot of gypsy pavers out there. They just come by and say, hey, I got an extra load in the back of my truck. How would you like me to do this? That's what happens. And it gets done either on a Friday or on a weekend. And we have no recourse because most of the people don't even know who the paver is. They don't even have a name on their truck. They just come in, they got a roller and they got a load of andesite and they just pour it and they go. So I don't know, how this can be crafted, but it is a problem. I'm sure the legitimate pavers are aware. I would assume that they're not supposed to go over the site when they do the apron and the driveway, but we're dealing with people that are just out there, laying andesite whenever they can, wherever they can.
Correct.
That's a big issue with
It's more of enforcement and making
We're
sure.
working on it, like, the asphalt plants are not open yet, the permits have not been, I mean, they may be given out, but.
Until August.
Yeah,
One in Waterville.
Yeah, only one.
so,
Standing in line with the trucks.
but we are aware of it, and we are working towards it, and like I said, having Fred in that position, working with codes, Carl and I have been talking about it, we really want to, you know, it's a, I guess it's a little bit cliche, we really want to stop talking about the code and really start making sure we're enforcing it and getting it done, you know, and that's the thing, so we're gonna, if there is a hole, I know that I was talking with Avi previously, who was here, about possibly a hole being in the zoning section of it with regards to things that could be grandfathered. For instance, we were talking earlier, and if someone were to be caught paving in front of their yard, in front of their house, they can actually go to get a zoning variance. And then they get stuck in this variance process. And during that whole time, it can remain. And, you know, there's things that have been led loopholes to that. So we're looking to, there may be something there, but like, you know, for the most of it, we really want to get into the enforcement. And that's what, you know, we've talked about with the mayor and Carl, really trying to just make an example of a couple people, possibly really get out there, make it noticeable that this is not something, you know, that we could. Very good.
Any other questions?
Well, this is good. Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Riggi?
Yeah.
Chris, yes, one more.
Are we done with this part of it?
Okay.
With the paving?
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Just a question, because it's come to me, and it's sure it's come to other council members, when National Grid doing all the gas line work they're doing for the city, now they're up in Bellevue, and they do leave quite a mess. Who does the follow-up? Does the city follow up to see, because, I mean, they dump their stuff on people's lawns, and do they ask permission first before, or should they ask permission?
On people's lawns,
I'm saying on the right of way, but sometimes on people's lawns.
Yeah.
You know, I've saw them dump stuff on people's lawns, and people aren't happy about it. So, I mean, the repair afterwards isn't the greatest either when they repair the road, we know that. Now Gildolan Ave is gonna get redone, that's fine, but now we're doing Cherry Street, Eleanor
no,
Street.
Cherry, I mean, the issue that we have is, like I said, is we have a coordination meeting with them every other week. And before we get into the paving season, which we're about to, we have two larger meetings where we both sit down and put all our cards on the table and we say, where are we going? So up in my office right now, I have National Grid's paving, their installation main plan for 5 years. And I have my paving plan, which as you know is a 3-year rotating district. So what we do is we try to find the best overlaps with those. Cherry Street is unfortunate because as gas, very new, but as gas works, the issue that we're having is gas works on loops. In order for them to maintain service when they're putting in the new mains, they need to maintain loops. On my street, on the camp one time, they decided to try to cut a corner and not put in a loop. And what that resulted in is half the street didn't have gas because it ran out by the time it got to the dead end. And we cut a hole down Eastern Avenue by Price Chopper to create a loop. So what that was is, we're looking ahead, we're doing some paving in Bellevue, and we want some main streets to be done, and to be able to do that, they needed to create loops, which meant to go into Cherry. Larger streets that we're ahead of, Union Street in the Stockade, they're gonna be putting a new gas main on Union Street from Erie Boulevard to Washington. They're gonna do that before we get in there, because I know that that's a street. Front Street, they're gonna be going into Front Street at the end of this year, possibly beginning of next year, so we're not gonna be going in there. But we are trying to, I mean, when I started, we weren't coordinating at all. I mean, now we're up to, at least it's 60-40, 70-30. I mean, the Gilderland, the Broadways that we've been doing before federal work. But I can talk to them more. We have contacts at almost all the levels. The issue with National Grid is it's run like an army. They have National Grid, and they have a contractor. The contractor only does mains. Another contractor does connections, and another contractor does restoration. So there are quite a few parties to coordinate with it.
Could you maybe, I mean, one thing to mention to them, if they could coordinate a little better, maybe with residents there when they're there, let them know what's going on. Because one lady, I was walking, and she couldn't get to her house. She had to get a bus, she couldn't get to her house because they had this Eleanor Street closed off. So that was a problem, you know, a big problem with that. So anyhow, but people have complaints, they should call the engineering department, I assume, right, with what they're doing?
Yes, engineering department.
Let's call engineering.
Right now, we will do.
Okay, good.
No Oak Street.
Shots. Oh, the Oak Street.
No, you missed your
We got it from Anthony Ferrari. I want to hear it from the horse's
Yeah,
mouth.
all right.
Where are we at?
Oak Street Bridge is going very well.
Yes.
And as much as we badmouth Amtrak has been a good partner in the field, and we're on schedule. All the steel repairs under the bridge that you can't see, they're complete. They're gonna start replacing the joints and some of the more structural members up top. You're gonna see them start cutting into the deck very soon. And we're on schedule for June 6th.
June 6th, really?
Oh, sorry, didn't say that, sorry, we're on schedule.
Sometime in June.
Don't-
Mr. Kosher said last meeting, what year?
What year?
Yeah, exactly, right? Well, we're on schedule.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, any,
Good job. Stay right.
thank you.
Motion to recess.
Any second?
Yep, second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right,
Call order to Finance Committee, the acceptance of CHIPS funding, our annual acceptance with Mr. Wallen.
So what you have in front of you is our annual New York State Consolidated Highway Improvement Program funding allocation. If you look at the attachment, you will see that we are receiving both Pave New York funding and extreme winter recovery money. We don't usually know if we're going to be getting the extreme winter recovery money every year until the budget's done. Pave New York is a 5-year program, so we were anticipating that. So the total amount of money this year is $1.6 million.
Any questions? Motion to accept?
Second.
All those in favor? A motion to adjourn? Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Call to order public safety contract removal for asbestos fire station. Please.
Yes. So what this is a contract for removal of asbestos from Fire Station 3, as it states that we are doing prior to design and construction of improvements to Fire Station 3 as per the SAM grant that was received last year and the additional funds that were capped. So in order to kind of keep it separate, we decided to bid this separately to get a better price, as the GC usually not do asbestos work, they sub that out. So we wanted to get a jump start on it, and we'll be removing all of the pipe from the basement, pipe wrapping, and the asbestos floor tiles from the quarter strips.
Questions? All right, we have a motion.
I am. Second. Oh, no, I'm not. I got moved up. You're still there, yes. You're on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Call to order health and rec and.
Close out public safety.
Oh, sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Call to order health and rec. And we have one item here that was pulled from last Monday council meeting because of, many calls were passed out of committee, and we addressed, some of the concerns by council member and some others. And we found out that last year we passed a resolution that we had increased fees for the uses of some of these fields. And I had asked Mr. Kosher to table this item, bring it back to committee, and not to go ahead with this, the amended version of Mr. Kosher had proposed, but to bring it back to the committee and let's have a discussion by the council member and to move forward with this new proposal and to refer the new fee structure to the Parks Advisory Committee so they can address it and bring it back to us and give us a guidance how we can move forward in terms of either we increase or we have the fee the same. We'll defer that to them and move forward. At the time, we're going to discuss Mr. Kosher amended version as of last Monday and try to move forward on this here. And this will address some of the concerns that Mr. Riggi had, some concerns with people sending emails and pictures and videos of using parks and things like that. And myself received several calls in terms of that. So we're going to address that. We want to look into how we can be able to strengthen it, but not at the same time we're not penalizing any group, but it's just want to hold people accountable for, when they're using the park and when they're pulling permit to make sure that the park is, in the order that they receive it. And that's the bottom line we're trying to do here. So everybody should have a copy of this here, here, and I can defer to Mr. Koja, Mr. Palmini to help because we all have some input on that, Mr. Riggi, and to address it if there's any concern or issue with this amended version. Go ahead, Ms. Porterfield.
Again, my concern remains with the 225 for police call, and I know that I got an email saying that Corporation Counsel had looked into it. There's a manual that's provided by the New York Conference of Mayors, and it talks about municipalities and the laws regarding it. And one of the things it says is that if there's a state law saying that we can't do it, then we can't supersede it with a local law. I have not been able to find out or not whether that is, but to create a penalty for a police call, a service that's covered by taxes and things that we don't do for other entities, I'm not really 100% satisfied that we could do that. And before we add that as part of it, I would really like to make sure 100% that to add a penalty, and it's called a penalty. We called it a penalty to people for a police call. So I would really like us to just really delve into that, to absolutely make sure that that is something that people, I mean, I don't even know if it's legal to penalize people. How do you even say that it's a penalty? So a fee, but a penalty. Again, I think that we should just make sure that that's something that is absolutely 100% before we do it, because I definitely have concerns about it.
Currently, and I understand the theory that you're raising, but it really doesn't apply to these situations. That we could charge, and we do charge events where they need additional police services.
Mm-hmm.
So when there are street closings, large gatherings, we will internally review it, determine what the appropriate staffing is, and for the group or individual to get that permit, they have to agree to pay that component of the public safety cost, whatever the police are going to be. Sometimes fire department, you have to have a paramedic right there. And so what the theory seems to be on this, what the council's talking about, is if everybody behaves themselves, we don't have to send the police there. If they don't behave themselves, it's not in that base level. They've chosen to engage in a course of conduct that's increasing our need to send police, and so we're looking to cover that cost. And the department estimates about that $225 to send the officers there. If you want a presentation on that or more detailed analysis, we can do it.
I would like to make sure that, and again, it's calling it a penalty, we're not calling it a fee, we're not calling it, we're saying we're penalizing.
I'm not locked into that term. You call it administrative fee or whatever.
I just like to make sure that it's something that we, can do, and I understand what you're saying, the analogy about when people close streets, et cetera, and so on, I get that. Is that fee also $225? Is it comparable administrative fee?
It's based on, the department reviews it, and it's based on what the adequate staffing would be. So it could be lower than that, or it could be more than that, depending on length of the event, the number of officers that would be required to be on site.
Right, and I'm not sure how this amount came up with, but it would be important to me to know, how we're determining what that amount should be.
Mrs. Palmini.
So Ms. Porterfield raised this important point last time. As she knows, Mr. Faltico responded saying that was something that was legal, and the $225 comes from the cost per hour of one police officer is basically $112 per hour. Assuming 2 officers per car, that's where the $225 comes into play.
Go ahead, Ms. Barrasso.
I would like to see some more definitive language around when they would be charged with regard to a police call. I see that it's not in the case of medical emergency, which makes sense, But there's also things like, there could be a car accident, it's not really anybody's fault, it's an accident. There could be, I would hate to think that a person who felt unsafe for some reason would hesitate to call the police because they didn't want to cause any sort of an issue. If you're having a mass brawl, or if drinking gets out of hand or something, I totally get those things. But I think there are some nuances here that could be better defined, because if a woman feels threatened or a man feels threatened, they should be able to call the police and get help. And that's kind of a one-to-one person thing. It's not a group that's out of control. And that's what our police are there for, right? To protect our public. So I would, I don't know how we flesh that out, whether we just say, what, if there are police calls for this or this or this, there'll be a fee that's instilled, but I personally would like a little more definition there, because there's a lot of things that can happen outside of a medical emergency. Well, if somebody gets their wallet stolen, the team shouldn't have to take a $225 fee. So that's just my thoughts on the police portion of it. I think that the security deposit is really important. I think that no permits, if you have past invoices that are not paid, are important. But the police part of it, I'm not opposed to the essence of the idea, right? But I think we could be a little more specific about it.
So we have in here a founded report is written. Do you want me to define that a little bit more, in a sense, to make it
Yeah,
more,
like
spell it out a little more?
yeah, and maybe we could have the police offer that to us, like, I would hate to have it be a personal situation that ends up falling back on the league, because that's not really fair to the league, right? And they shouldn't be penalized if, one person has an issue. Like I said, there's a theft, there's a threat, there's, something along those lines. So
I don't think that's a problem. We can get that together and maybe send it a draft in the next day or two, and move this down. Mr. Reed, have any?
On the deposit, how are we gonna define half of the season? Because I don't know how these seasons run, are we gonna go by so many games and cut it in half? They're gonna have a permit for, let's say, 20 games, so at the end of 10 games, they
Yes.
pay the second half?
Yes, the understanding is that that's what will happen.
Okay. Now, how about some leagues that, according to Mr. Mazakin, or some leagues that only play like 3 games or something like that? Are they still required to pay a $1,500 deposit?
Says here for non-leagues, so like a special tournament or something, it's $250 per day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's $750 you're asking them to come up with. Right, that's $750 you're gonna come up with.
No, we're talking about a special tournament. Someone
Well,
who
you
is,
said if there's a 3-day tournament, Mr. Mizek. I think it's the Albany one, isn't it? They're coming in with a tournament from Albany or something, I
I think
guess.
so, yeah. June.
Right.
But again, this doesn't impact teams that already have their permits. This would go in place afterwards. Those that have already had permits aren't impacted by this at all.
So it'll impact them next year.
Correct.
do you want us to look at that, or maybe look at instead of $250 per day, we can do $250 for a small tournament like that?
Well, if the 250 covers it is that for one game, John? The 250 would?
Basically, no, it's a day. So if you played let's say you have a big tournament, they come in, they could play 4 or 5 games in a day. So that's kind of the thought, getting some input from other people on the council. That's why that came into play, but can certainly look into that if you think that's a little of a concern.
So then again, our local high school and college teams, are we charging them? Are they gonna be exempt? I'm hoping. SEC was playing at the field the other day, and the high school was playing there. You're looking to charge, I mean, you've got just a handful of parents this year. You're looking to charge them $250 a day as well, when it comes to their 8 games that they play. And the community college, I don't know what they play there.
Well, it's a deposit, it's not.
It's a deposit, it's not like we're charging them there, they're gonna get it back.
It's not a fee.
It's not a fee. doesn't matter.
If you behave, you get your money back. If you misbehave,
And who's gonna determine if we misbehave, Mr. Paulman? You?
no, it's right here. It's in the thing.
What is
If
it?
a city crew is dispersed to pick up litter.
Yeah, if we have to send out our staff to go and clean up after these games, then they will, file a report and say that it had to go here to this park. And
So are they supposed to take a picture when they leave? Picture when they arrive, and picture when they leave? How are we gonna disprove that?
No, if you talk to Mr. Bill Maseka, he will tell you, no, once they're called out there to do these kind of jobs, they normally will take pictures before they do any cleanup. Even Mr. Jeremy Howard used to do that.
I have a problem charging my own kids, our own little league teams, our own high school teams for security deposit. That's my concern, guys.
So instead of day, why don't we say, okay, 250 for special tournaments?
I think you gotta add that it's being held in
per
escrow.
day.
Can you add that it will be held in escrow as well, correct?
Yes.
Right, can you add that in there? Because I don't want them cashing the checks, right?
So means they could cash the checks, then they have to,
What's that?
escrow means they're gonna put it in their escrow account.
So you want to cash it in a separate account, right?
Right, but it's still gonna get cashed, the check will get cashed. You don't want checks hanging around.
Yeah, you can add that word there. Pass them into an escrow account. And we'll refund, unused.
So I just want some clarity that this doesn't impact teams that already have permits. So we have teams that have already, pulled their permits for this year.
Most of the teams already pulled their permits for here.
Well, I don't know, I'm working the permit off, so, so some teams have and some teams haven't. So are we going to do this for, let's say there's a team that comes along and hasn't yet, they're gonna be impacted by this, but the teams, because they happen to pull their permit before we pass legislation, don't have to do it? Or are we just gonna start next year with this?
I think the goal is to start with the teams that, or the leagues that didn't pull the permits yet. And next year everybody will fall under this category.
And the reasoning for doing that is?
I don't know if there's any reason why we would fall. Once you pull this out here, this will pass out of the committee here, and if it passes out, we'll enact it, and whoever's pulling permits in the next month or so will fall under this new regulation.
To eliminate the trash in the parks, to have a deposit so that there's some accountability back to teams to ensure that teams do cleanup. So if they don't, the security deposit.
I understand what the purpose is, but that's not my question. Because it says it's applying to teams that have already pulled their permits and to teams that have not, this applies to them. So trash applies to all the teams. So that doesn't really answer my question. My question is how some teams who've already pulled their permits, this doesn't apply to them. Teams that already have, this does not apply to them, but teams that have not, it applies to them. If our goal is to make sure that the park is cleaned up by regardless of who uses it, I'm not sure how we can definitively say, okay, it doesn't apply to them because we know they're going to behave because they already pulled their permits, yet these who haven't, they may not. I don't understand, to me, that's not really clear how we draw that line.
I mean, I can find out, and we can find out how many teams or league have pulled permits and get a number. I think everybody's on the waiting list, waiting on us to move forward here. And then the Parks Department can go about issuing permits. I know they're not issuing any permits until the last couple of weeks, back out waiting on us to move forward.
Just to be clear, I'm 100% in favor of the security deposit because we've had problems in the past. That is not my concern. My concern is that it applies to some and not to others. So,
But it's kind of like what we passed last year was June 17th.
Mhm.
And I don't think,
It didn't get implemented.
we didn't make it retroactive.
No, we didn't.
There was already permits pulled.
But people didn't get billed the 75 either.
That was incorrect invoice by the city.
Yeah, and I think they made
That was a mistake that was made.
Yeah, so they made the correction and the corrected invoice is out. I think it's a clerical mistake from.
And your point's well taken, it really is. But the reality is if a team litters and city crews are dispersed, the city will charge them for that anyway. The only difference is the security deposit.
It should apply to everyone, in my opinion. If we're gonna pass it, and then you just said we passed it in June, and so we made that retroactive, even though there was.
No, I don't think we made it.
It wasn't
Okay.
retroactive.
Okay, so we started charging people, but now we're making it retroactive because we're going back and billing people. That's what you just said, we're going back to
They were
billing.
invoiced the wrong amount, they corrected the invoices from last year.
So they're billing people who were billed $25, now they're billing them $75.
That's not retroactive, Marion. And first of all, we're not doing that. That's,
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
that's the, thing.
well, did we get the information to the administrative department that should be billing people in the right time? I mean, obviously there was some kind of misstep. I don't know if the staff got the information when it should be billed, but back to what we're doing today, I still don't see that people that have already pulled permits doesn't apply. If we're asking for everyone to do the security deposit, then it should apply to everyone. I don't understand how we differentiate just because someone didn't pull their permit in time or at a specific time.
So we make it retroactive.
So let's make it retroactive then. We can. Yeah.
Mayor has a question.
Mr. Mayor.
It's tried to do what's in place when they come in to make the application and play. So if you want to make the fee in effect on whatever day it is, everybody going forward, if they're playing on the field, they have to pay the security deposit. You can either grandfather the ones that applied early, charge the ones that are applying late, or pick a date and have a uniform fee going forward. We'll tell people they want to play after a certain date, they've got to pay.
Well, if we pick a date that's after the season, I would not in good conscience pick a fee that makes people going forward down pay. So either we start it next year, or then it's retroactive. And as I did watch the council meeting, although I was not here for it, and I heard people clearly say that did not have a problem with the security deposit. That was very clearly stated. There's some other concerns, but the security deposit was not a concern that people, so they're willing to do that, and so they understand that.
But on the same token, I got several calls from local Babe Ruth coaches, Schenectady high school teams, and local youth organizations that said that security deposit would really, truly hurt their kids. Coaches pay out of their pockets for many of those kids to play baseball throughout the entire year. And again, that new turf, the new field, first of all, every kid has to buy new spikes, which is almost $100 a pair of spikes. And coaches have already been purchasing out of their own pockets. That's the problem I've got with the youth baseball piece, so.
Mr. Mujahid,
Go ahead, Mr.
is there any reason why we're trying to do a one-size-fits-all here? I mean, is there any reason we wouldn't tier this into youth
wanna cut
sports
to the
and adult
chase.
leagues?
Yeah.
Wow.
Cricket.
The problems we have is with the cricket leagues on Grout Park and Mount Pleasant.
And that's really not fair to figure, right? In
That's
this
kind of right.
situation, but is there any reason why we have to do a one-size-fits-all? Why can't we do a scale based on youth sports versus whatever? I don't know the intricacies of it, but it seems to me like, we don't have a fee on the other legislation that's passed. It's indicative of the sport or the age or the field or whatever.
Or the crowd that they bring to the game
Right.
even, right?
Let's talk about fees.
Not security.
Right, but I'm saying, but we're talking about security deposits, so why not make it indicative just like the fees are? Why does it have to be one size fits all? I don't know the answer to that question or the consensus,
Security
but
deposits for youth and just have it for adult sports?
that's not what I'm proposing. I'm just saying it doesn't have to just be one way. It can be different security deposits for different levels of
Try to treat everybody
sports.
equally,
Yeah,
so no one's
yeah.
singled out.
That's exactly what we're trying to do here, is not single out.
Well, yeah, but you still have budgets. You have difference in budgets, right? So you have larger leagues that have lots of adult players that can absorb the $1,500. You have youth that sometimes are on a shoestring and can't. So maybe it's a waiver, maybe it's I don't know, but it seems like it bears more discussion to make sure that we're ensuring that our youth can continue to play while also protecting the city from, the problem with the litter, because it is pervasive in some situations. It's distressing to look at, those fields. So,
Well, it's not only the litter, but it's also protecting the investment in the fields too.
oh, sure.
So, I mean, I know you get that, but
Yeah.
that's the other piece, is protecting what we've invested in, so the youth can continue to play on our fields.
So what I can do, Ms. Perazzo, we can define the funded complaints or written complaints and get it back to you in a couple of years, tomorrow or so, and try to define that. I mean,
Interior for you.
in terms of the youth, I'm thinking about them. Can we defer to the mayor and ask him to use his discretion? There's a youth league, so, make
Sounds scary.
determination to waive, or that's something that we can do, or we give it on the Parks Department through the mayor to make a determination on that. I'm not sure of how.
Well, the youth leagues are defined differently by different people. I mean, you got college, they're certainly not youth leagues.
Yeah.
And you defines like Babe Ruth is 15.
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
right, that's how you can define. That's, the others will be tough.
Right.
Defined by age.
So can we exempt the school and Babe Ruth? I'm just throwing that up. I'm not saying that we have to say no. Just
So schools are exempt from the deposit?
Listen, I still think this whole thing ought to go to the committee. I really do. You've got the Parks Advisory and Recs Committee there. They're finally gonna be, like, we gotta talk to the mayor. There's a couple guys that really want to be on it. One is the coach of the Schenectady baseball team there, Rosen. He's got another guy that's involved, because they didn't have any seats at neither the cricket guys. But I agree with Mr. Palmetti that the trash and the garbage and the alcohol, I mean, we're gonna continue to get calls if we don't do something
so regular. These are the pictures.
I don't know what the answer is.
The problem is these pictures of Mr. Riggi you received and forward to all of us.
So we get them.
Yes.
You're gonna continue to get.
And we're going to continue together. That's why we need to put things in place to address these, and they're going to make correction. I don't expect them to continue to do that. They're going to make correction and move forward.
How about
all this is going to go away.
How about to Mr. Mudavarian's point, we exempt the high school, city high school, not other high schools, and the city Babe Ruth teams. That should cover all the youth leagues, and then everybody else falls under this, and that way it's equitable.
Those are the ones that play.
Yes.
That's not true.
No, they're not.
No, I'm talking about youth leagues.
Oh,
Yes.
Youth leagues, that is true.
so the city high school, city
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth.
It's okay.
And then you're gonna continue to look into the 225, is that, are we okay with that? Are you gonna redefine that, is what you're?
Yes, we'll redefine that for Ms. Perazzo.
It's
Specific, yes.
What it is and what isn't. Because I think that alcohol piece, which we kind of overshot here, I think is very, very important. The citation for using alcohol in the park, I mean, that's immediate. And again, as I've talked to several of us here, this ordinance is only going to be as good as enforced by the Schenectady Police Department. If they don't drive by in a routine, or if we wait to get a call there, this ordinance, you can just rip it up and throw it out. You got to have a partnership with the Schenectady PD to enforce this. Because alcohol is a major problem.
But with the new ticketing in place, this should make it a lot easier for them to, the new tickets that we passed last year, remember? That should make it a lot easier to streamline it for the police.
That's in place, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it
in
is.
place.
Yes.
So I think that's all important.
Yes. This is going to help. It's going to help with that process of
All right.
and help give them the necessary resource to be able to address these concerns.
So just see if everybody's okay with moving if we flush that piece out, right?
Yeah, we can move it out and just address some of the concerns and get it back in a day or two, and we'll move this.
You gonna be all right with that? I mean, just
Yeah,
ask
no, so-
where you gotta ask.
So you're suggesting we move all of it and then just kind of wait for whatever feedback, the amendments?
Yes.
I'm still stuck on 225, and I'd like to know more about I mean, not right now, obviously, about the billing and the unpaid invoices and how that impacts people that have already, not sold their permits, if that's part of the impact. So, and did they get billed? And is the reason that they couldn't pull a permit because their invoices were outstanding, but they hadn't been, re-invoiced for the new amount? So how does that all play out? There's just a lot of moving parts to this.
Chairman, Councilmember,
Yes.
if you call Curtis or Anthony tomorrow, they'll give you a detailed briefing on what went out, what didn't go out, what we're trying to correct.
Okay.
So we don't have to, we could do it tonight, we could be here another hour.
Let's order it. Okay.
All right.
All right.
See if Mr. Riggy's okay with stuff.
Mr. Riggi, yeah.
We have to address these problems that we have. We have to do something to address these problems and make people responsible. And unfortunately, the only way to make people responsible is when it comes out of their pocket. That's the only thing that seems to work. We can't rely on integrity and being good neighbors much of the time. So, yes, I agree with Mr. Kozer. We need the police department certainly on board to make this work. Do we really need maybe we don't need the charge per call. But if there's alcohol witness being used on the field, people out in the field with alcohol, that's gotta be automatic, that's it. You know,
That's the law.
you're done. You
It's
know,
the law.
I don't know
You're
what to
breaking the law.
say.
You're
Yeah,
breaking the law.
well, if you're breaking city law with music or with alcohol or with anything else, whatever it is, I think that should be automatically revoking the permit. That's the way I see it.
Very good.
And to your point, this puts real teeth into it and causes hopefully good behavior for a change.
And I think it will. All right, so can I have a motion to move this with?
I'm not making motions because I'm not on that
Okay.
committee. I have a question.
Go ahead, sorry.
And Mr. Kozier brought this up, the Recreation Advisory Commission. So your suggestion and signaling to them is to.
We're asking a little bit of
The-
instruction.
Well, we're not gonna do that now because now we're gonna move on this. I just thought, just get rid of the whole thing, let them take a look and just do it. But again, I'm rethinking and really the trash and calls we gotta do something, as Mr. Riggi said. We have to do something with the calls and to pay, well, I had on my computers, yeah, when the folks came over to my house and I showed pictures and here they are. You
So
know?
we'll address those, items.
Yeah.
In a day or two and we'll get them out back.
Move on.
All right? So can I have a motion?
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Very good.
Any other business for, health and rec? Do you have a motion?
Play ball.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
I'm gonna bring, city planning and development back to order. And motion,
Go into executive session. Yes.
second? Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going into executive session.
Andrew does not want to leave again, he said.
Well, no, I want to know why, that's part of the law.
Just tell them, we're just-
We're going over contract negotiations
And purchasing of
and
property.
purchasing of properties, selling of properties, there's financial information of individuals that need to be maintained confidential.
And then claims, we're going over three tax surgeries and property damage.
Right. There you go. I gotta shut that thing off. Sharon, you gotta make a, shut.
Shut.